Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to take a call on the second reading of the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority, and I want to begin by acknowledging the member who's just resumed his seat. I've spent a bit of time in his company over the last 3 or 4 days, and I have to say that I have a great deal of admiration for the way he chaired the Select Committee. There's a lot of tension around the debate, a lot of frustrated submitters, a lot of frustrated members of the Select Committee actually, dealing with an issue which is really important to everyone who is on the Select Committee, and I have to say that he treated us all in a manner that was respectful, and I think he engendered better behaviour as a result of his chairing, so I just want to acknowledge that. I want to say that from our side of the House, we are totally committed to the Canterbury recovery. But, Mr Speaker, what the Minister has failed to understand, and annoyingly, despite the best efforts of many submitters, what the majority of the other side of the Select Committee table failed to grasp, is that recovery is about more than speedy demolition, removal of rubble, rebuild of infrastructure and rebuild of buildings. Recovery is about ensuring that the residents of Canterbury are part of the vision of the future of their area, of their suburb, of their community, of their city, of their region, and that every one of us needs to have a strong voice in that recovery. It's about ensuring that as we look at what's going to happen to streets and suburbs, shopping centres, that we take this opportunity to ensure that the current inequities that we have in our city are addressed, that we give everyone a better place to stand as we recover from these earthquakes. In my view, the Minister doesn't understand that fundamental difference. The National Party members of the Select Committee didn't appear to understand the difference between rebuild and recovery, and therefore this is a tragic, wasted opportunity, not just to get it right, but to get it better. I hope that as we progress this legislation today, as we go through the committee stages, that the Minister will look seriously at the amendments that we will produce, will do as he said he would do when he gave us a commitment, look seriously at the recovery aspects of the submitters' proposals. Mr Speaker, this has been a very unusual process, but as members have already stated, these are very unusual times. There is no normal anymore in Canterbury. We talk about a new normal, and I guess the Select Committee process was a good example of how to do things quite differently. We didn't have a bill referred to us. That's quite unusual. We didn't have advisers. That was very unusual. So when we had submitters appearing before us, we had no officials who could explain why they had put X, Y and Z in the legislation to answer the questions from the submitters. So we didn't have any of the usual technical advice available to the Select Committee, and we have gone through this process frustrated as a result. The Minister came to the Select Committee, gave us over an hour of his time and was able to answer some of the questions, assured us when he left that he would get back to us with other answers, and I'm sure he will, and I hope. The Minister's nodding. I'm very pleased to hear that, because we're not sure which of the questions that we had unanswered are going to be addressed in the supplementary order paper. Mr Speaker, another unusual incident is trying to give a second reading speech about possible amendments as the Minister's giving out his supplementary order responses. The point of that comment, Mr Speaker, is to emphasise my concern about this entire process. I think it is better to take a little more time, particularly in preparing legislation such as this, to get it right rather than to rush it and get it wrong. The politics of that would be entirely borne by Mr Brownlee, but in my view, the future recovery of Canterbury is far more important than any political muck that the Minister might wear as a result of getting things wrong in this legislation. That's why I urged a little more time to be taken so that submitters could consider the bill, so that the Minister could consider the submissions seriously, so that more people could have an input into what is a very, very powerful new organisation, and so that we as a parliament could send a message to Canterbury that we have a united voice supporting the recovery of Canterbury. In my view, that would have been ideal. But instead, we got a hodgepodge, last-minute, rushed, frustrated process without the Select Committee even having the opportunity to have technical advice. Mr. Speaker, I have to say we had some very high-quality submissions. The submitters actually looked quite exhausted. Some of them had literally spent the night prior to the Select Committee in Christchurch preparing their submission. That's not a good process. That's not a good process. For people to get a bill at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon and be expected to appear at a Select Committee between 10 and 2 the following day is a very poor process and reflects badly on this Parliament. It reflects badly on how we view the concerns of the submitters. I think it's disrespectful, myself, to expect people to prepare a considered and thoughtful submission with that sort of notice. Some of the submissions were very serious. One, in fact, from the New Zealand Law Society, quite highly regarded organisation, said that one of the clauses, clause 70, says it gives very wide powers for Orders in Council to override enactments contrary to the rule of law and good legislation principles and are therefore undesirable. That's a very strong comment, Mr. Speaker, and others were equally concerned. So while the submitters all said we support a timely process for the strong recovery of Canterbury, they all also expressed concern about the rushed nature of this process. Mr. Speaker, the other big concern I have, alongside the rushed process, is the lack of genuine community engagement. If we don't take the people of Canterbury along the path of recovery, then in 5 or 10 or 20 years' time, the people of Canterbury won't be passionate and proud of their region as we currently are, won't debate vigorously the merits of any adjustment, won't have the sort of debates we have about the square or one-way streets or different buildings, whether or not the fountain in Botanical Gardens is a certain colour. We won't have that sort of passionate debate because people won't feel part of their city and their region. We can debate more rigorously about details of our city than any other part of our country, and I want that passion to remain. Other people are amazed by it. Other people sometimes laugh at it, find it extraordinary. But it's part of the passion of our city, and without community involvement as part of the recovery, we will lose that passion. Mr. Brownlee's lack of understanding of how fast communities can engage and how seriously people want to do that is demonstrated in the legislation by a clause that says we'll have community engagement, but it can't be at the cost of timely recovery. We all know that. But it's insulting to the communities to treat them as something that is going to slow down and hinder a strong recovery. In fact, the Waimakariri District Council put it very well in their submission when they said quite clearly that not only had the community's involvement not only not slowed down the process, but as the Mayor described it, had made the recovery enduring. Without the people of Canterbury going along this path of recovery, it won't be a sustainable recovery. It may be a recovery where we get buildings demolished and rubble removed quickly, where we get our infrastructure rebuilt. We all want that. We all are committed to that path. But what has to be included in this is the voice of the people, because no amount of rubble removal, no amount of rapid demolition and rebuild can give Canterbury the spirit that we need for a strong recovery. Only the voice of the people can do that.
Yeah, very good.